How do you feel about now having a chance to be around it regularly, the sort of state of the UC basketball program?
It's kind of similar to when Mick took over and Bob had left and the program had been kind of decimated. And Mick built it back up, and you had to have some patience there for a while because you were in the Big East, and UC's about to go into the Big 12, which is the top league in basketball, in my opinion. You look at the net, and UC is like fourth in the net in the American, and UCF is third in the net in the American, and both of them would be dead last in the Big 12 in the net. So you're about to go into some really stiff competition. So I think you're going to have some patience, and it's not easy to have because let's face it, we've been spoiled around here. The guys you mentioned did pretty good, and you went to the tournament with regularity. You know, I went to school there, and it was Ed Badger and Tony Yates, and you know, you're throwing a parade in town if you get to the NIT.
Yep, yep. Okay. Well, what about then this year's team? Look, they've won 15 games. They necessarily haven't beaten any good teams, so to speak. They made a great run. You were there covering the game the other day down in Houston. Realistically, for the rest of this season, what's a realistic expectation for what they can accomplish? What they reasonably can accomplish, and should UC fans be able to say, like you said, some patience, okay, it was still a good year?
Yeah, I mean, they had 18 wins last year, 18 and 15. They're at 15 and 8. Realistically, they've got a decent chance at 20. Used to be 20 wins, got you somewhere. Where that is this year, let's be honest, NCAA, you're probably going to have to win the league tournament, which is possible, but you're an underdog. And then do you get in the NIT or do you go to the CBI because there's cost involved in things like that? But I think Wes Miller's building a program and trying to get better talent in. And you've got Jizzle James on deck. You got Rayvon Griffith on deck. They signed a JUCO point guard yesterday, Davion Thomas, Day Thomas, and he's out of Texas. If you go back in history, UC's had some pretty good luck with junior college
Yep.
point guards out of Texas. If you remember Nick Van Exel, and
Yep.
you would.
Yep.
So I'm not saying he's Nick Van Exel, but you have to trust in Wes Miller's ability to get kids. He got Landers Nolly out of the transfer portal. He reminds me the most of one of the old Bearcats of the current Bearcats. He's a guy that would fit in with any of that crew, and he's very talented. And hopefully he stays another year. It's like every sport, though. You're recruiting your own kids at the end of the year. You got to get new kids. You got to keep your old kids. This job has changed totally because in addition to just covering games or finding a neat story, you got to keep up with who's in and who's out because of all this going on with the portal. It's a new game.
Speaking of Nolly, this is a young man, like you said. He's not totally tipped everybody off as to whether or not he's going to return for what would be his final year of eligibility. But I mean, look, I'm not the young man. I don't know his family situation. I don't know their financials. I don't know any of that kind of stuff. But it seems it would be a logical choice for him to come back next year, be the returning leading scorer on a team, and a chance to be part of a better team even next year, right?
That would be my advice if you would ask me. You're talking about what's the NIL situation because I'm not privy to what kids get or don't get. But in a lot of cases, I think there's situations where kids might be able to get NIL money that would be better than what they may get playing in the G League or playing overseas. And if you run into a situation like that, why not stay? Because to me, I miss the senior nights. It's senior night used to be the kid that was there 4 years and put in all the work and developed from nothing to something. I mean, you go back, Bobby Brandon, for instance, Ryan
Yep.
Fletcher, guys like that came in, they were role players. They were barely getting off the bench. And by the time they left, they were studs. They were big time players. I don't know if we're ever going to see that anymore. You're seeing a lot of one and dones and the transfer kids in, but I think Nolly could benefit by staying. There's more he can add to his game. Wes Miller will say that. He's got a lot of potential. Victor Locken's got a lot of potential, things that he can add to his game. You look at it, you can pretty much bring back all of your starters except for DeJulius.
And look, that's something to get excited about. And I imagine these young players that are getting a little bit more playing time this year, that we'll continue to see them get more and more minutes as this season moves forward. But, Wes strikes me as the kind of guy, Scott, that, look, he's not going to start carving minutes out of David DeJulius's game, because this kid has busted his tail in this program since the day he walked in the door. You got to let that kid just go play, if he wants to, every minute of every game, right?
Oh, yeah, and he's one, come senior night, you really need to applaud for that dude, because he came from Michigan. He had some struggles, and, he stuck it out. He's 13 points away. If he gets 13 tomorrow against UCF, he's hit 1,000 points at UC. 55 people have done that. That's a pretty good club to be in. He's a great leader. If he's not hitting his shots, he's really dishing the ball great. He had 9 assists the last game, and he knows that at the next level, he's 6 feet tall. He's going to have to be able to pass. It's not necessarily just popping shots and driving the lane and all that. He can't hit the shots, but he's done a lot better passing the ball here lately.
Shift gears real quick, and I know that by the time you got both feet into the job, covering UC, it was basketball season. But right in the middle of basketball season, they made a coaching change for the football team.
Right.
They started quarterback, because I brought up the other day this whole quarterback thing. And if I'm throwing you, a curveball here, because you are in the middle of covering basketball, and I certainly respect that. You'll be on the football beat when the football time comes around. But
hey, life's about curveballs. Let her rip.
All right, let her rip. We'll throw the big bad bender. Well, how does the quarterback thing shake out ultimately, do you think?
Well, they get Emory Jones out of Arizona State, and he had a pretty good career at Florida. Stat-wise, the Gators struggled a little bit. Arizona State was not very good last year, but Emory Jones is an accomplished player, and Scott Satterfield said we need a guy with experience that's been there. So he's got a lot of big-time football snaps under his belt. Okay, now he is more of a runner. It's not that he can't throw, but he's you look at what Scott did at Louisville. You had Malik Cunningham, and he was running the ball some. So Emory falls in that category. Evan Prater would fall in that category if he stays, because Evan's probably going to go through spring ball and have to make a decision. I don't know, but that's just my guess. But then you got Ben Bryant coming back. Now, Ben has proven to be a pretty good thrower. So you've got two different types of quarterbacks. Most teams need two. It'd be nice if they both stayed. We'll have to see how it shakes out. But again, the way this portal works out, you're probably going to see kids go through spring ball, and if depending on their playing time, they may up and leave, or you may have new ones coming in and all that. But you have to say Emory Jones is probably the leader right now. But Ben Bryant has to be considered because he's put some pretty good numbers on, and even in Eastern Michigan the year before took them to a bowl game and did pretty well. Other than Evan. Brady Lichtenberg, pretty good arm from what I've heard. He only got one snap in the bowl game, but let's face it, the bowl game was kind of a debacle, and that's a whole nother topic where you have kids playing in bowl games that didn't play during the year, and that doesn't sit well with me, but no one asked.
Look, I don't know how many people knew Satterfield well at all in and around the offices of the UC football offices, the athletic department offices, all those kinds of things. He's replacing a guy who took this program to places I'm not sure anybody saw coming in Luke Fickell. What's sort of the vibe on him now that he's been around a couple of months, 2 or 3 months? He was crazy busy in the portal stuff. You're obviously never stopping recruiting. He's probably having to watch endless amounts of film to get very familiar with the guys that he's going to be coaching this upcoming season. What are you hearing? What's kind of the vibe on him a couple months in the job?
Well, he's certainly trying. I know yesterday he was down at the Senior Bowl seeing the Bearcat players that were down there and also some of his Louisville players. And today he spoke to the Ohio High School Football Coaches Association. So, and he's made the rounds with Kerry Combs and all the local high schools, as have most of the coaches. One upside, they've invested more into the recruiting department, the personnel. You now have a general manager. You have so many people that are out there searching for talent, be it portal or high school or JUCO or wherever. And they've invested in that, and you have to going into the Big 12. And so all I can tell you about, I've already talked to him, once where it was a non-interview situation. Seemed wonderful. Fun to talk to. Good guy. I hear good things about him. Again, it's going to be a big question mark, like basketball. We're going into a new league. At UC, I should say. I shouldn't say we because your dad would lecture me. But yeah, UC is going into a new league, and you got to hope for the best, but be prepared that day in and day out. These are tough games, tougher than you're used to, and so maybe. Looking at the schedule, when that schedule came out, it looks favorable to me.
I agree with you 100%. I feel like their schedule was all things considered. You're not playing Texas. You're not playing TCU. And I don't know if TCU will be as good as they were last year, but they got to the Final Four this year. You're not playing either one of them. And on paper, the best team, even though I think Kansas State might end up being the best team. But on paper, the best team theoretically is coming here in Oklahoma.
Right. And UC has had experience playing some of those teams. Wasn't that long ago Oklahoma came to then Paul Brown Stadium, and UC had them on the ropes, had a chance to win. Baylor, I think, is beatable. They have beaten Kansas. When I was doing the games on radio with Dan and Jim and Paul Keels, even before that, we were at Kansas, played there. Kansas came here, and UC smoked them one year. Actually, I can give you a little historical perspective, which also shows how old I am, but I tend to do this. That particular game against Kansas, Gino Guidugli was the quarterback. They wiped him out. I don't remember the score offhand, but I'm guessing 34-6, something like that. There was a young man that came in, and they said, Gino, this is this young man from Woodward. He wants to be a receiver here. We think he has a good future. I'd like you to meet Antoine Peak. Antoine Peak, who came in at 6'3", 180, and went on to become a linebacker defensive line in the NFL. So the Bearcats have turned some players into big-time players. I just wrote something on the Kelseys. There's two examples there. Connor Barwin, more examples. There have been kids that have come here. Troy Evans was a walk-on, made the NFL. Kids have come to UC and turned out to be pretty decent players when people thought they wouldn't be. So you got to hope for more of those as you go into this league.